Hello and welcome to the July edition of the Farmers Supply Association Agriculture Report. I'm Randy Klepechka, agronomist with Farmers Supply Association. Well, we're rounding that final turn, and I guess you could say we're heading into the home stretch. You know, we're into that time of the year where a lot of our crops have gone to the reproductive stage and they've flowered and starting to form grain or seed or whatever they form, and we're kind of at that point right now. You know, we're not, all the fields aren't there, but a lot of them are, so we can kind of start to see that light at the end of the tunnel. And it's, you know, it's pretty exciting for most of us in agriculture to, you know, to kind of see your hard work kind of come to fruition towards the end. So hopefully we can finish this thing out strong and have us a really good crop. Looking at our different crops and the stages they're in, corn that I've been looking at lately is mainly in the milk to dough stage, so it's advancing pretty well. Rice, actually the earliest rice, I've started to hear some reports of some heading this week as we tape on July the 9th, so the beginning of rice heading. I mean, we still got a ways to go on that, but the beginning of the early rice is starting to head, so you know, that's always a good sign. Soybeans, of course, always the widest range of stages. You know, we've still got seed in the bag that remains to be planted yet. And then on the other end, we've got some early beans that are in the R4 to R5 stage. In other words, they're full-size pods, or the bean within the pod is starting to expand. So you can see we're getting things are happening and we're moving along. You know, I always like to use that sports analogy. You know, we got a chance. We're in that third or fourth quarter of this crop, and we've got a chance. You know, like you get in a football game in the fourth quarter, if you got a chance to win, you can't ask for anything else. So, you know, I think we got a chance to have a good crop. So, if we can finish things out strong. I want to talk about a few pest management items this month that we need to be thinking about over the next month or so. First, weed control in soybeans. Well, I purposely wanted to tape at this field behind us. This is a new technology of soybeans called Enlist or E3 soybeans. There was seed produced a couple years ago, a little more in the field last year, and then a whole lot this year, or a lot more are being planted this year. In this herbicide technology, you can use 2,4-D, you can use Liberty, and you can use Roundup. All three of those, that really makes for a good spectrum of herbicides for controlling weeds. In this field out here, our program has been, we started out with Gramoxone plus Zidua. So we burned down the existing weeds and we put Zidua for a residual. We had 2 post-emergence applications with Enlist, or the 2,4-D choline compound. We also used Liberty and Roundup in this field. So you can see behind me, the weed control is just absolutely outstanding. I'm so happy about this field that we just had to come and film here today. This field has a big history of pigweed issues that I've been working with this farmer for several years, and you know, it seemed like we could never have complete success. We'd have acceptable control, maybe a decent control, but this year we've got outstanding control, and I'm just as happy as I can be. This field has a big seed bank full of pigweeds, and we've done a great job with it, I think, and thanks to this technology. One thing I do want to mention, we've got a lot of guys just maybe putting 2,4-D by itself in their tank. Really would like to see you mix the Liberty in there as well. You know, 2,4-D can kill pigweeds by itself, but we're seeing resistance issues in other states. Now, I've heard in Tennessee that they've got big issues already with not being able to control the weeds with the 2,4-D alone. They're having good luck still with the 2,4-D and Liberty. So when you go across the field with a 2,4-D, at least most of the time, put some Liberty in there. I don't say you have to do it 100% of the time, although that would be better. But get some Liberty in that mix so we can avoid resistance. And again, just really happy with this field out here. So next on the list is corn earworm, or soybean insects. Corn earworm, we always have an issue with corn earworm, you know, usually about in August or something like that. There is a relatively new material. It's a biological control. It's a virus. It's called halogen, and it's very effective on corn earworm. It's very economical, so I think more and more producers will be using this product, I think, so I just want to talk a little bit about it. Again, it's halogen. The big difference that we need to think about as a grower or a scout is we've got to identify that worm population early on. When you first see corn earworms in a field and they're small, you've got to get that halogen out here. You can't wait. The thresholds that I've seen are anywhere from just the beginning of your first corn earworm in the field, the beginning of the infestation, up to about 5 small larvae. If you get past that, then you need to really probably forget about halogen and go to some of our old standbys like Besiege or Prevathon. One thing to remember with halogen, again, I said it's a living virus, so we've got to be careful in how we handle it. You don't want it out in heat a long time, so when you pick it up, you're going to have to not leave it out in your truck for a long amount of time or something like that. So always keep that in mind. We've got to watch the way we handle that product, but it can be very effective. The people that have used it for the most part have been very happy, and again, it's very economical. So if you got questions on halogen as our worm populations come about, well, give me a call, and certainly I think we'll see more of this in the field, and I think that's a good thing. Next thing is soybean fungicides. We've got some guys, or a lot of guys, like to use automatic soybean fungicide applications, and that's a good thing, especially I think where you're really putting the inputs into the crop, trying to make a high yield. You don't want to lose anything to diseases or anything like that in the end. I think these fungicides have good aspects about them, and not only diseases, but keeping the plant greener for a longer period of time, which usually will correlate to better seed field and better yield. So, a lot of fungicides being used. We have questions about timing every year. A lot of the, stuff you read says R3 to R4 is the best timing for these fungicides. I kind of like to lean more towards that R4 period than the R3, because for the simple reason, I want that fungicide, if I put it out there, to last through grain field. Sometimes if you go too early and we get a disease outbreak, then you may have to make a second fungicide application. So if you'll lean a little more towards that R4, in my opinion, I think you can avoid having to make that second application, save you some money and get you some good control there. So remember, maybe lean towards that R4 timing for your fungicide. Moving to rice, just right back to fungicides in rice. We've got two schools of thought really with fungicides. One is the automatic spray, regardless of whether you've got disease or not, spray it. The other one is the scout and spray method, where you scout for diseases and then spray. Both of them are good ways of handling things. But there are a couple of diseases with rice that we deal with where you don't scout and spray, because you don't see any sign of them until it's already happened. And that's the smuts, kernel smut and fall smut. So we're going to have to make automatic applications if you're concerned about them, and I think it's a good thing in most cases to make an automatic application for a smut. So I want to talk about that timing. First, some of the varieties that are more prone to smuts, and that's Diamond, also the Gemini, the full-page Gemini, the full-page 7521, and also the Provisia LO1. So those are four of the ones that are most susceptible to the smuts. There's a lot of others that are susceptible, maybe not quite to that extent. But again, if you've got susceptible or very susceptible varieties, I think you need to think about that automatic smut application. The timing is mid to late boot, and we kind of have differences maybe in communication or terminology when you deal with some of your specialists and researchers versus people like us in the field. So we kind of define things a little bit differently. So remember, we want mid to late boot. Mid boot is about 14 days after green ring. Late boot's about 21 days after green ring. With mid boot, that flag leaf is just coming out. You can kind of see the point of that flag leaf coming out. A lot of times you'll have to peel the tissue back to make sure it is the flag leaf, but that's kind of that beginning of that window for that smut application. Then late boot is when you see that flag leaf fully extended. You can see the base of that flag leaf and you know that it's fully out. So let's lean in that mid to late boot for the timing of that smut. You can go all the way pretty much up to boot split, but your control starts going down, and if you get to boot split, where that head is starting to emerge out of there, you're not going to get very good smut control at all. So I think we've probably been going maybe a little bit later than we ought to. So let's back that up and get into that timing right there. As far as materials for the smuts, again, for kernel and fall smut, propiconazole, or the active ingredient is tilt, is kind of what's been the standard. Quilt XL has propiconazole in it. Stratego has propiconazole in it. So I think any of those will be fine for it. There's a new material from Syngenta called Amistar Top. It has a different triazole in it. It's also very effective against kernel and fall smut. So one of these fungicides are going to be your best bet. If you are going one of the propiconazole materials, you want at least 6 ounces of equivalent tilt in there to get the job done. When we first started using propiconazole for the smuts, we used to use 4 ounces, but 4 ounces doesn't cut it anymore. I like to be in that 6 to 8 ounce range for smut control. Finally, rice stink bugs. Last year I ran into a field over in Poinsett County in the Wiener area that we had some issues with stink bug resistance to the pyrethroids, namely Lambda Psi. Had researchers come up and look at the field with me. We had bioassays or tests run at Fayetteville, and there was some resistance confirmed out there, so we're going to have to be concerned about that. We think it was kind of an isolated case. We don't think it's going to be a big issue. We think you can still go out there with your normal, pyrethroids, which Lambda Psi is probably the number one, pyrethroid being used for rice stink bug control. We think we're going to get good control with that, but we're going to be monitoring pretty closely, and hopefully we won't have resistance issues. But just wanted you to be aware of that it was right in the heart of our farmer supply area. So we need to be watching that, but I don't think we need to change anything that we're doing differently. I think we're still okay, but we're going to be monitoring and probably doing some more testing to make sure that situation, that resistance issue, has not spread. So again, that's kind of where we're at right now. We're in July and we're heading down that home stretch and hopefully to a very good crop. This has been Randy Kopechka with your Farmer Supply Association Agriculture Report for July.